live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
I will not address any of the claims regarding the hat statement that was on my social media. My team is currently looking into it. We will get back to you on that, Blake, but I will not respond to the statement that I made in March of 2023.
So just so everyone knows, on Twitter, Joe came out and said, and it's so funny.
Allegedly.
Well, it's so funny because here it is right here. So we have it literally.
You had it pulled
like for
up.
me to share it for you on screen.
Go for it.
Because here it is. This is you on March 17th, 2023, the year of our Lord, saying, Blake, if Jane Daniels is a first-round pick, I'll eat a hat.
I will not be providing a comment at this time, Blake, and we will see what happens after the 2024 NFL draft.
Well, can I tell you the truth?
What?
You're going to be eating a hat, buddy, and you agreed that I get to pick out the hat. You know what? I love cowboy hats.
As long as it's somewhat edible. Look, I've said this before. I am never afraid to admit that I'm wrong. And a few weeks ago, and I at different points in the season, have admitted my thoughts on Jane Daniels were incorrect. I am starting to see, and from people that I've spoken to, are very high on Jane Daniels as a draft prospect. Not only is the conversation for him to win the Heisman, but I'm coming around on Jane Daniels. I've come around. I am on team Jane Daniels, as I think a lot of people now are.
Interesting. Very interesting that you say that. But nevertheless, we got a lot to talk about because the team that Jane Daniels played yesterday just hired a head coach after, Joe, what might have been the craziest 24-hour swing. You got Mark Stoops leaving Kentucky, going to Texas A&M. Then all of a sudden, he's not going to A&M. He tweets out, I ain't going nowhere because, well, the fan base completely did not want Mark Stoops to be the next head coach. But then the guy that both of us had number one on our list a couple of weeks ago when Jimbo got fired, Mike Elko, is set to be announced as the next head coach of Texas A&M. We will talk about that. Not the only head coaching news. It's just reported that Jeff Lebby will be the next head coach of Mississippi State, the OC at Oklahoma, and Jonathan Smith leaving his alma mater at Oregon State to go to Michigan State. We'll talk about that. But, Joe, that's not the only thing we got to talk about. We got to actually get to the games.
That's the craziest part about all this.
I love freaking rivalry week, dude. Rivalry week, man. Whoo-wee.
That's the craziest part. This isn't just like week 12 where there were a bunch of inconsequential games. We even said this coming into the week that the slate wasn't visibly as exciting because there weren't a lot of ranked on ranked matchups, but holy hell, did we get an exciting weekend of college football, followed up by 3 major coaching hires that happened yesterday and today. There's probably going to be even more over the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so as the season starts to cool down. But holy hell, this is going to be a pretty big show.
Got a lot to talk about. Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan pulls it off yet again. Ohio State fans are in the gutter that we can't find them. Okay. Also, we got Florida State, Tate Rodemaker. Some people thought he looked good. I mean, you can't be under 50% say that your quarterback looked good. Billy
We'll
choked.
get into that. We'll get into
Billy
that.
Choked.
Well, it's not just him choking. That whole that whole team is undisciplined. It's very, very undisciplined.
Did you see the kid Wilson, the wide receiver, slap the coach's hand?
That's pathetic. That kid should be on the bench. Are you kidding me that you're letting a kid do that to you? That I wouldn't let that kid. Actually, the season's over for them anyways. They're not.
Yeah, it's over.
They're not bowl eligible, but I would let him. I would make him compete for his job in training camp if he's going to act like that.
Georgia Tech and Georgia. That one went down to the wire, and I got. Listen, got
a garbage time. What I know you don't like that word, and I know that you don't like to describe games as that, but that was garbage time.
We were down 8 with 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, driving to score. Then
Georgia,
they 3 and out.
Georgia treated it like it was week 18 of the NFL season and
No, they didn't.
really play a couple of
No,
their
they
players.
didn't.
Yes, they did.
Joe, they threw the ball 12 times in the fourth quarter. What are you talking about?
I'm not worried about anything with Georgia, and frankly, I don't think that it tells me much about Georgia Tech.
Okay. But nevertheless, Mike Elko to Texas A&M is what we will talk about to start off with. We do have a super chat in here, Joe. We will mention this just because John sent it in. We'll re-talk about this during Mike Elko's segment, but he said, Blake, you called it Elijah Robinson as the DC when you said you wouldn't mind him at the DC at LSU. I said that yesterday on the LSU postgame show. Texas A&M is trying to keep the defense intact and the 2024 recruiting class intact. LSU has to bring back Jamar Cain. Well, this isn't an LSU show, but nevertheless, it looks like that they are keeping Elijah Robinson, who has been the architect of putting together really good defensive line classes. Look what that defensive line has done all year. Joe, they're still a top 10 defense in the country, meaning Texas A&M. We'll talk about Mike Elko when we start off. But look, massive show. We got a lot to discuss. One of the bigger shows that we'll have here. We'll discuss everything and in rivalry week. Let me ask you this one quick question before we get going. How was your Thanksgiving, my man?
It was good. I was a tad hungover because it was the night before.
I was too.
I mean, I'm sure as you probably know, and some of our listeners know, it's a tradition in most small towns or towns in general that you go out to the local bars and you end up meeting up with people that you went to high school with and crap. And yeah, I had a little too much, and then the next day during Thanksgiving was a little rough, but still great Thanksgiving. Great Thanksgiving.
You got to know how to pace yourself. You'll learn that when you have kids.
No. I do. The problem is that I get hungover way easier than I used to. That's the problem.
You do have kids, or you do know how to pace yourself?
I do know how to pace myself. I just do not recover as easily as I used to.
We'll see. All right. We got a lot to discuss. Let's waste no time. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those social media groups, share to all of those social media pages. If you're on YouTube, we continuously are growing, Joe, closing in on 800 plus subscribers in the last 28 days. Thank you all so much for subscribing. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, because if you can't watch the live show, you still can catch the clips that Joe puts out, which chef's kiss, Tommy DeVito level.
Don't even start me with Tommy DeVito. Don't even start me with Tommy DeVito.
He just won his first home game. Joe, let me tell you something. Rule number one about being Italian. You ready? You never, and I mean ever, discredit what an Italian does. Ever.
Okay, I get that, but he's pushing the Giants further and further out of any top. They're going to be outside of the top 10 by the end of the season because they're going to keep winning meaningless games.
Discredit what an Italian's doing.
I'm not discrediting it. It's just annoying.
Mamma mia, viva the Butana. Look at you over here. All right. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline. Mike Elko, next head coach of Texas A&M. We talk about that next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. Hey now. This week we will be talking starting Monday. Joe, I think we have to talk about the playoffs. I think we're going to have to do this tomorrow, even pushing some our power rankings a little bit back. That might just have to be a 5-minute segment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking that too. I think the power rankings are kind of starting to
Yeah, I
dwindle.
mean, they're pretty much there. They'll all work itself out here, okay? But we're going to have to talk about the playoff. If Texas can beat Oklahoma State, which I think they are the team on the most upset watch this weekend, okay, against Oklahoma State, we will talk about that nevertheless. But if they get into the playoffs, you're going to have to say that they're back. I mean, look, they made the playoffs. I think Sark has done a really good job this year. But Quinn Ewers still looks a little bit off to me, but we'll talk about that a lot this week. Mike Elko, who knows? Because last night, Joe, Texas A&M allegedly or apparently was going to hire Mark Stoops as the next head coach at Texas A&M. Obviously, everybody knows that Mark Stoops is currently the head coach at Kentucky. But, Joe, it would appear now everybody's pretty much in lockstep that this looks like it's going to be happening, that Mike Elko will be the next head coach at Texas A&M. Joe, he was number one on my list, okay, for Texas A&M. I know that he was number one on your list at Texas A&M. He has been a fantastic defensive coordinator. The way that Duke has played this year, I think, shows, look, even though that they are a 7-5 football team, they had a couple of quarterback injuries. They couldn't stay healthy along the offensive line. They still played really good football. He developed a defense that played teams like Clemson really tough and won. Played a really good Notre Dame team down to the wire and should have won that game. They've had multiple seasons of some really good wins. Mike Elko was at Bowling Green, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Texas A&M as the DC. He did fantastic at all those stops. Now, I'm sure that you can talk about it a little bit more, that you're a Notre Dame guy, how good he was at Notre Dame, but especially was pretty good at Texas A&M. In 2022, becomes the Dukes, or Duke Blue Devils, I should say, head coach. He's 16-9 in his tenure. I think that this is a good hire because, look, defensively is where they've made their hay the last couple of years. Now, it would appear that Elijah Robinson, the defensive line coach, the co-coordinator, is going to remain there, be the DC. Mike Elko called plays at Duke. I would assume he's going to call plays again at Texas A&M. I don't mind a guy calling defensive plays when he's as good as Elko is. The question becomes and will continue to become, who's he going to be his OC? What is he going to do with the offensive staff? Because he has weapons. Can he keep this recruiting class intact? Can he kick some of these guys like Evan Stewart from hitting the transfer portal? He's got a really good group of core nucleus of dudes that he can build around. And, Joe, they can win some football games. But is Mike Elko really ready to come into the SEC at Texas A&M, no less, which, by the way, he was there and he knows the culture. Does he know, or is he ready to take that program to where they want to go?
As you mentioned, we both were really pushing for this Elko hire. And I think that I'm even more than you thought that this was the move that they had to go with. I think that going after Bob Stoops Mark Stoops was not as exciting or the right move compared to hiring Elko. I'm actually shocked that was their original option. That was who they wanted to go with. For me, what makes this work perfectly, as I said, why he should have been the guy from the jump, is that he has built a team at Duke with the identity of what works now in college football and especially in the SEC, developing a physical roster with a really good defensive line that runs the ball very, very well. That is what will work in the SEC. I think, though, more importantly is, one, he's been there before. He understands the dynamic. He is not jumping in and having to spend the whole first year figuring out what it's like having to deal with the boosters and the fan base, which are some of the most ambitious and, let's be honest, crazy fans in college football. They have very, very high expectations. Knowing how to manage that stuff and being around that already is going to help him. But the biggest thing that is not talked about enough with Texas A&M is that they do not have a history of being a winning football program, yet they have national championship expectations. They have gone and hired multiple head coaches with the anticipation that if you brought somebody in who took over a winning program and led them to national championships or just good seasons, that they would come right in and do the same thing at Texas A&M. You need somebody to build a sturdy foundation, and I know for a fact that Mike Elko is going to do that because he did that quickly in 2 years at Duke. That is a program that is never good at football. Duke is never, ever competitive or good at football, and that was one of the best teams in the ACC. I would argue they would be the second or third best team this year had Riley Leonard not gone down with the injury that he suffered because they
Right.
did not have a backup option. So plain and simple, this to me is the best hire so far today. And if I were to grade it, I think I would give it an A-.
I can't go with the A-. Okay, let me tell you why. Okay, look, do I think that Mike Elko has the potential to be an A- A type of hire? Yes, I do. Okay, like, do I think that Mike Elko having Elijah Robinson on board with him, who, by the way, was the D-line coach there? I mean, Elijah Robinson's been there for 6 years, knows Mike Elko, knows his system. They both know recruiting. Defensively, I think that they're going to really be good. Okay, I can't say that yet because I don't know what he's going to do and how he's going to hire offensively. Okay.
It's fair.
Also, look, the SEC, for what it's worth, kind of got poo-pooed upon this year because head-to-heads. I saw Danny Cannell and our buddy who's, commented on the show a couple of times, and somebody that we talked to, Josh Payton, him and Danny going at it. Everybody's talking about, the SEC's down because of head-to-head. Okay, well, you beat Florida in 2 of those games. Like, calm down, Peter Pan. All right. The SEC historically, at least the last 20 years, has been the best conference in the country. Maybe it has a down year here or there. Nevertheless, I do think that the SEC is still the deepest conference. When you talk about Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and others, like, that's the middle of the pack teams in the SEC. Now, Mike Elko comes into Texas A&M. You have Texas and Oklahoma that are coming into the SEC. I think that they could struggle a little bit coming out of the gate. I think defensively they'll be tough. I think they'll be a hard-nosed, gritty football team. I think they're going to get after it. But, Joe, I do wonder what Elko will be able to do offensively, but he's got some pieces. He's got Connor Weigman. Now, let's see what happens with Weigman. Does Weigman stay? Does he have any kind of input on the offensive system? I do like what Elko runs. We saw what he ran at Duke, right? Like, look, he's going to run the football, but he kind of had to run the football a lot at Duke. He also has the system that we've seen, though, in the SEC that has started to work. We see it at Georgia. We see it at Bama. We've seen it at Michigan. We've seen it at places. Hell, Ohio State tried to implement it and just lost to Michigan. I think that they'll struggle out of the gate. I think year 3, would be the year that you would have to judge him based upon what he can do. But I will tell you this. It's going to be easier for him now to get A&M to the relevance part of things because the playoff is expanding. Joe, in 3 years, if he can't get them to a playoff, he's no better than Jimbo. He's no better than Kevin Sumlin, okay? Right. I think he can do some good things there. And I think people, look, he likes to recruit. He wants to recruit. I think that they are really good at developing under him. We've seen that. We've seen players underneath him develop. I just really worry for them and that team offensively, how they'll transpire and what they'll look like next year, depending upon who his OC hire would be. I give it a B. I give it a B+. Okay.
I don't disagree with that. I thought you were going to say B-. Then I would have debated with you.
B+. I lean more of a B. I just look, Joe, the guy's 16-9 as a head coach, right? You just spent – here's another thing that we got to talk about. You just spent $78 million to fire Jimbo to bring back a guy that Jimbo Fisher hired as his DC now, right?
Well, yeah, but we can agree, though, that they're two very, very different people. And I also – this was one of the other things that I paid a lot of attention to with this hire. It was pretty noticeable, the transition and the difference in just the tone and the chemistry of the roster and the defense after he left. They had a really tough year the following year after he was gone. I think that that's pretty telling of what he's capable of doing and how important he was for that roster. And again, he knows what it takes to be successful at Texas A&M. Like he understands what it's going to take.
Because they never were. I mean, if you want to give him the COVID year.
One of the best years that they had was the last year that he was there. That's the crazy part. And I know it's a COVID year and some of us tend to discredit, that season. But because even the year that they beat Bama, what was their final record? Didn't they finish with like 3 losses or something?
Yeah, I think they were 8-4.
Right. But to
If
come
I'm not
back on the
mistaken, remember they had the potential to go 9-3, and believe it or not,
yes
Max Johnson, okay,
yes
who's also in the transfer portal. Max Johnson was the one at LSU that flew the fade route to Jeray Jenkins
it's
to
hilarious.
make LSU bowl eligible and for Texas A&M to be 8-4.
Good for Johnson to hop in the portal. I think somebody's going to scoop him up. That's going to get a good starting quarterback. To talk about the offensive stuff though that you're bringing up, I understand and I agree with the notion and the reasoning for bringing it up, because you can really swing and miss with this, and you don't need to put together a team that's really good defensively that can't move the ball. There's plenty of teams in college football that have the same problem. A lot of people are asking, and people have asked me on Twitter, and I saw somebody say it in the chat, the possibility that Riley Leonard transfers to Texas A&M. I don't think that happens. On some pretty good sourcing, I have an understanding of where he's going to go.
Riley Leonard.
I don't think there's that much of a gap, but I will say I'm
gap.
not running off Connor Weigman. I would do whatever it takes to keep that kid, because that kid is very, very talented. He has a very live arm, and if you get a good offensive coordinator, you get one or two or at least one good transfer portal offensive lineman. I don't know, man. That offense could be pretty strong next year if things go according to plan.
Connor Weigman is better to me. I will.
He's a better passer. I think Riley Leonard
is a better overall quarterback.
I think Riley Leonard's a more impactful quarterback because of what he brings to the table as an athlete. They're very different. I don't think it's apples and oranges. I don't think it's really easy to compare them. I think I know where Riley Leonard is going to go, and I can't really provide context on that because I have not been given, necessary approval to say any of the things of where he might end up going.
I mean, basically, you're just saying Notre Dame.
I'm not saying Notre Dame, but
yes, you are.
Somebody who I know that has spoken to him, he is not going to Notre Dame. He is not going to Notre Dame.
I don't believe you.
He's not going to Notre Dame.
Joe, do you think it's how big of a deal is it that Elijah Robinson, who's been tabbed as one of the best defensive recruiters or just recruiters in general, as his DC? Because again, Elko's going to call plays. I think that him making that the first bit of business that he would do, I think that's also a big key for him.
You have to keep him as well. Him and Connor Weigman, keeping the both of them a coach and your most important offensive player, that's critical. That is number one move that Elko needs to do, because as you're talking about here with Robinson, we saw all of the defensive recruits that not only came in, but one of the position groups that wasn't completely torn apart by the transfer portal was your defensive line. And there's going to be a bunch of guys that get drafted pretty early once they enter the NFL draft.
Well, look, and when you're able to build along the line of scrimmage like they have done and keep that intact, and those guys hitting the portal, and look, Elko recruited a lot of these guys that he can get to stay with him, and so I think it's a big deal. I like Mike Elko. I love that he is a tough, gritty head coach. He's from your neck of the woods. He's from Jersey. He's from, I think, North Brunswick, South Brunswick, whatever it is, New Jersey.
South Brunswick, not too far.
South Brunswick, New Jersey. So look, he's a tough, gritty coach, and I think that they need that. I think Jimbo wasn't as tough as he led on to be. Okay, so look, you need a tough, gritty coach. Now look, they're going to have to go into the state of Texas and start out recruiting the Longhorns. Can they do that? Because look, you've had some good recruiting classes, but Sark from the offensive side of things has been taking you to school a little bit. He's been winning some of these battles here of late. Okay, so you're going to have to go in there and win some of those battles.
Yeah.
All right. Jonathan Smith is where you want to go next.
Yeah, let's talk about oh no, I thought you said you want to go Lebby.
I do want to go Lebby. Can we go?
All right, let's go Lebby.
All right. Here we go. Jeff Lebby, the next head coach, and it's actually announced by Mississippi State, so I feel better about this one because, the way the A&M went yesterday, I don't feel completely comfortable with all that going on. But Jeff Lebby, the OC at Oklahoma, formerly at Ole Miss, the son-in-law, which some people do not realize, of Art Briles, is the next head coach of Mississippi State. Joe, I got to admit, I love Jeff Lebby. I'm a Jeff Lebby apologist. I've been a Jeff Lebby apologist. I think this is a great hire from Mississippi State. I think this is the most Dan Mullen move that you can make, and they made it. Oklahoma is fourth in the country in total offense, third in scoring offense, 6th in passing offense, 10th and on third downs, 3rd in first down offense. And Joe, they're one of the better teams in the country in the red zone. Look, Oklahoma, for what it's worth, okay, did not have a lot of pieces that stayed at Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley headed out west to South California, University or USC. They didn't stay. The quarterbacks were gone. Wide receivers went in the portal. O-linemen went in the portal. They didn't have a lot of top-tier talent, I should say, on the offensive side. He goes out and gets a 5-star quarterback. I don't think he can do that, okay, in Mississippi State, but he's been in these type of situations before. Joe, look how they recruited and how they did things at UCF. He was a big part of that. He's been under Heupel. He's been under Lane. He's been under the Bryles. Dude, he might be one of the – he has, from an offensive tutelage resume, name a guy that's been under Heupel, Kiffin, and Bryles that could have a better offensive resume than this guy. He knows the state of Mississippi. He is a good recruiter. He's going to want to go in there and recruit. I do think he's going to get some weapons at Mississippi State. Now, do I think that he will ever be a 9-10 win team? No. I don't think that he can get him there.
No, absolutely not.
But can he start replicating some of the things that Lane has done? Can he replicate some? Because he saw the formula under Lane in that state. And I will tell you something. People think Mississippi State's just some and they are some rundown, poor old school. Joe, I saw them spend $45 million for a baseball complex. They got money. Okay, they will spend money. The question has been, and the thing has been, they have not had a coach that can get them to spend that money. I like Jeff Lebby a lot. I hope that this works out for him. I think that a lot of people are going to get to a place when he's now the head coach. They're going to say to themselves, look, man, I do not want to play this dude. I do not want to play because they can. I guarantee you that they're going to be able to score on teams and you'll be like, man, don't overlook them. I love Jeff Lebby a lot. I've known Jeff a little while. It's no secret how I feel about him, but I think it's a great hire for Mississippi State.
My initial gut reaction, I was a fan of the hire, and then I kind of let it ruminate. I let it sit for a little bit, and I thought about it.
Don't do it. Don't break my heart.
I don't hate it. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is an F hire. I'm just not super in love with it, and it's what you just talked about. The ceiling for him at Mississippi State really is 7 wins, and sometimes you hope with these hires that you grab somebody that's been in a G5 program, and I thought that was the direction that they should have gone in, somebody who has head coaching experience, who's worked at programs that required some building and helped get them to a competitive level. I'm a little worried because he does not have any head coaching experience. That's where I'm coming from here. I understand that there is a lot of offensive production and prowess that has come from Lebby in the 2 teams that he was with. And what you said about him having been at Ole Miss, I think that that's a really good point. I completely agree with that notion. His experience at Ole Miss is going to help him because he has been around and in the state and understands how recruiting works in the state. I'm just super, super wary because of this, because of not having experience being a head coach. This stuff is so hit or miss when we hire coordinators. It's so boom or bust. It's so high risk. It's high reward to an extent, but it's very, very high risk because you're assuming and hoping that through osmosis that the traits of other coaches have worn off onto him and that he knows how to control a locker room. It is such a different dynamic to go from being an offensive mastermind to then being a man running a roster, running a locker room. And we've seen in the history of college football so many times these offensive gurus swing and miss. Like I think so much about Cliff Kingsbury. That's one that comes to mind. And Lincoln Riley's struggling right now.
But that's different.
Why is it different though? Lincoln Riley,
because they don't have that. Can I tell you why? Art Briles and Lane are in his corner. The relationship that Lane Kiffin has with Jeff Lebby, people do not understand. Now I know that they're bitter rivals, and I get that. There's not a better friend to Lane Kiffin in this business than Jeff Lebby. Not one. And your father-in-law is Art Briles. He can look, Cliff Kingsbury didn't have that, nor did Cliff Kingsbury care about having that.
That's understandable. But what I'm getting at here with Kingsbury and with Kiffin, or not with Kiffin, what I'm specifically talking about here with Lincoln Riley is that he took over Bob Stoops' situation and was able to produce success because there was a foundation built. And then he goes to USC where there is no foundation, and we're seeing that the cutesy offensive shit doesn't really work that well. I just have this fear that when you've got these guys that are so offensively brilliant, they don't know how to manage the other aspect of being a head coach because they get so caught up in the play calling. And we just saw Jimbo F up as bad as he did because he got so caught up in the offensive play calling stuff.
But that's not Jeff Lebby, though. You can't assume.
I get that.
I mean, now let me say this: are you wrong? No, but I don't think it's fair to assume that Jeff Lebby, you can just put that label on him. Joe, I think this is a B+ hire for them. This is a B+ hire because Joe, it doesn't matter. Joe, they're a 5-7 football team now. That team, okay, I might add, who was run down, okay, putrid, and God bless it, okay, under Mike Leach, God rest his soul, passed away. Joe, Arizona's a top 15 football team. Top 15. This Mississippi State team in triple overtime beat Arizona at home with, I will tell you, the worst head coach that Mississippi State has had. Jeff Lebby will not be anywhere remotely close to what we just saw with Zach Arnett. Not even close. And let me tell you another thing. Under Dan Mullen, they've done this before. Mississippi State has literally gone out and hired a coordinator, the hottest named coordinator, offensive-minded in the country, and it's had success. There are double standards for programs. There are different standards for programs. Mississippi State's not wanting him to come in here and get to 9 wins on a consistent basis.
It's fair.
If he wins 7.5 games a year, okay? If he wins 7.5, they're happy as a lark. If he wins the Egg Bowl every other year, they're happy as a freaking lark. It's a different standard. This is a stepping stone for Jeff Lebby. It has always been a stepping stone program. The only place it's not a stepping stone program is for a guy like Mike Leach, who, let's call it what it is. God rest his soul. Mike didn't care about winning natties. Mike wanted to go in there, be a head coach, win 7-8 games a year, and don't care about anything. But I'm going to bring up a point about him and Lane right now. Look at this. Lane Kiffin just tweeted. Welcome home, Coach Leb.
Oh my God.
Back to the other sip. And this is the photo. Look at the photo.
Oh my God, that is so disrespectful. I know that they're boys. I know that's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious.
He would not do that, okay, if they weren't that close. He's seen his father-in-law. He's seen Kiffin. He's seen, let's call it, and I'll tell you this too. Joe, do you really think Brent Venables was running the team? Oklahoma literally just did it. Oklahoma went out and hired a coordinator. Now, it was a defensive dude. They just went out and hired a coordinator. Joe, they're a 10-2 football team.
Wait, but there's a really massive difference between a 39-year-old Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables, who had been a long-standing, very, very long-standing high-level defensive coordinator. It was every year that we would talk about and say, when is Brent Venables going to take a head coaching job? What was that, for 5 or so years? He was qualified to take a head coaching job very early on. I'm just a little wary that after, what is it? Let's call it what it is. 3 years of being a high-level OC, and last year was pretty questionable offensively. They weren't great. He's got 2 really good years I know I'm not. He's got 2 really good years as an OC at Ole Miss and at Oklahoma this season. And I think that the production is very notable. And I also appreciate the fact that, and I've said this when we previewed and talked about the firing of Arnett, that when you're facing off against teams in the SEC that are going to be a lot more athletically gifted, you need somebody that is offensively creative to find ways to steal football games. And I think that Jeff Lebby can produce that. I'm just really worried about the floor. That's where I come down to here. I think that they
just saw their floor.
But
I think that
Lebby is a much better coach than Zach Arnett and can prove to be one. but I think that there is a lower floor than 5-7 if this does not go well, because he's never been a head coach.
Strongly disagree. Neither was Zach Arnett.
But how many guys after Mike Leach's passing like really left that team? You know,
not a lot. They
didn't
have any more guys hit the portal than what any other school in the country do.
Yeah. My point is that Arnett drove a 7-5 team into the ground and turned them into a 5-7 team because he couldn't manage the roster.
Arizona. And I'll tell you this: that game on Thursday night, Jeff Lebby's not losing that game. He's scoring more than 7 points.
I don't disagree with that. I think that they find a way to win that game.
You got a dude that can win some games. South Carolina. Dude, they are built in right now to where they can get wins that they had no business losing them.
That's fair.
Mississippi State has more talent than South Carolina right now.
I'm in agreement with a lot of logic that you've provided here. I'm just a hair lower. I think that this is a B- because I'm just worried about the floor. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to text Jeff and tell him you think he's ass. All right.
Wouldn't be the first time you did that.
Well, you did have an SEC coach literally, which I sent you a screenshot. You literally had an SEC offensive coordinator not be happy with you.
Whatever, man.
Whatever. Jonathan Smith, the next head coach of Mississippi State. Joe, I got to admit, I was surprised the Oregon State head coach, when I woke up and saw that he was leaving from Oregon State to Michigan State, leaving his alma mater, I was utterly dumbfounded. I did not think that he'd do that. But Jonathan Smith did. Surprised that Jonathan Smith is going to Michigan State?
I'm incredibly surprised that he made this decision to leave. I'm absolutely shocked that he made this decision to leave. But when we really dig into it and we think about this, it makes sense. The current situation at Oregon State, the AD said that they were going to do whatever they could to get to a point where they could get him to stay and they could be comfortable for the long term. But the reality of it, the situation with the Pac-12 could seriously impact the resources provided to Oregon State. I hate to say this, but you got to get out when you can. You got to get out with so much uncertainty. And I think that Oregon State could be fine. I think that they should potentially hire one of his assistants. I think the defensive coordinator might actually potentially stay. Oregon State will figure out their situation. But I think very different from you here. I love this hire. I think that for Midwestern football, and I know that one of the things that's been discussed with this hiring is he has not coached anywhere outside of the West in his entire career. He was at Montana. He was at Idaho. He was at Oregon State. But to see what he's done for a historically just mediocre program with Oregon State and develop a roster with a physical run game, one of the better running backs in the country, but has developed offensive linemen to a point where you've got multiple guys in the discussion for being top 150 picks. That to me is good freaking coaching. I look at what Talise Fuaga does, and you know that I love this kid, their right tackle, going to be a phenomenal pro, and they've got other good offensive linemen. To be a good coach in the Big Ten and to get back to the point where they were in the Big Ten championship conversation and also in the college football playoff conversation, you got to develop offensive linemen, guys that are coming from the Midwest that aren't five-star recruits, and molding them into elite physical mauling players. And to know that he did that at Oregon State is proof to me that he will find success early at Michigan State.
I think that he has the toughest job.
Don't disagree with that.
Well, of the three that we just discussed, I think that he might have the toughest go of it. I don't like that he's never been outside the West. I don't like that he's going to be in the Midwest for the first time. What I do like is his offensive style, his style of play feels like Michigan State.
It feels like completely agree with that.
Okay. It feels like what they need, right? Like, could you imagine him getting guys like Kenneth Walker and some of the old linemen that they could get in Michigan State? And look, Michigan State, they're yearning for a winner. Joe, they had, what was it, something ridiculous? Like they had a booster give them their program, like their athletic administration, like $500 million.
Wait,
Or
really?
something.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Well, that was the whole thing with Mel Tucker. Remember that they had somebody give over like a group or something. Maybe it was $100 million. I don't remember. Regardless, they gave a crap load of money. They will spend money, but you know what, Joe? I got to be honest. They're with USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and some of the teams that are already in here. Now, I think that he knows how to beat those teams out west. We just saw him almost upset, Oregon. I thought that game was a lot closer than people made it out to be there at the end. Maybe they can be a mid-tier Big Ten team. Maybe. I
really?
Just don't think, I don't think I give this a C high or C plus.
I don't know. I think that for his track record over the past couple of years, this is one of the few hires that I feel really good about, because what he has done at Oregon State, for them to be in the conversation for the conference championship when they're a bottom feeder, they're such a bad brand in the Pac-12 that these other conferences didn't even want them. They didn't. They all said, "I'm good."
Can I tell you who he is? He's a West Coast Mario Cristobal.
I don't. Wait, why?
Because when he needed it, okay, he got the big win against Oregon last year. Okay, 21 down, they came back and won. Joe, this year, I mean, you can make the argument with everything that he had returning that they should have been one of the more top tier teams with all the experience coming back. And quite honestly, when he needed to make the play calls, when it was crunch time, they did not make the plays. Against Washington, they couldn't make the plays. I thought that he had some very suspect play calling against Washington. I thought he had some suspect play calling against Oregon. Okay, now maybe he's got one foot out the door, and I understand that. And that's fine. He's 34-35 as a head coach. Okay? He's a below 500 head coach. Now, I know that that's not created equally because of the fact that he had to take a program that was dookie water and make them something. He got the 10 wins a year ago. I don't mind him. I hate the situation he's going into. Look, your little brother to Ohio State, Penn State at this exact moment. Can he get them to Penn State? I think his ceiling is getting them to be Penn State.
I think that's attainable. I think that's very attainable, because that was what Mel Tucker, who frankly I think was very overrated coach, got them to that point. And when D'Antoni was there, am I tripping? It's D'Antoni?
Yeah, it's D'Antonio.
Why do I feel like that's not right? Regardless, he had them at that spot too, where a couple times they were good enough to go to the college football playoff. I don't think that there's an expectation for Michigan State to be a national championship winning team. I just think what's so impressive to me for him to do what he did at Oregon State,
it's Mark D'Antonio. You're right.
Okay, D'Antonio. It's worthy of him giving praise. And I don't compare him to Mario Cristobal, because Mario Cristobal has had two situations where there is unlimited resources, unlimited brand recognition,
that's fair,
attraction for recruits, and he is underwhelmed. For them to not win the conference is pretty lame. For him to be in the conversation for just in the championship as one of the worst brands in the Pac-12 is a massive, massive accomplishment. Like, when was the last? Is when Steven Jackson was there is the only time that I can think of that they were competitive. They're really never a good team, except for when he was coaching them.
Yeah, look, you're not wrong, but I mean, let me ask you this question. Okay. Well, I'm gonna leave that be, because the program and the coach that I'd label him to, okay, or the situation is gonna get us absolutely killed. Look, I think it's a C plus higher. I don't think he can get to where Penn State is.
For me, it's a B plus. I think it's a B plus because of his coaching background. His success, I think, is easily replicable. At the very least, for me, I know what his floor is. Like, I know that he is somebody who can step in and at the bare minimum is going to get them eight wins. But the question is, does the fan base get frustrated by a guy who wins 8 wins in his first 3 seasons? Is that something that leads to frustration?
I think the way that they look at it right now, they wouldn't mind it.
Right.
Okay. All right. You want to get into some of these games?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's actually talk on the field games. Let's talk about our good friends, though, over at HomeField Apparel. Joe, I am currently wearing my HomeField Apparel t-shirt. Looks like you are as well. Use that promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off. Christmas right around the corner.
There's a Black Friday sale right now. There's a Black Friday sale.
And you can get the Ruffino Joe 15% off, man. It's a steal. It's an outright steal. Let's talk about our friends over at HomeField Apparel. We got a lot of games to break down. We do that next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by HomeField Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan, whatever it is, even Idaho. They have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
I'm not going to make the joke,
Well,
but I feel like I should. Dude, Ryan Day, buddy. Come on. Let's talk about it. Ohio State, Michigan in the Big House this past Saturday. Joe, I think pretty much the way that we thought that this game would go, at least to me, now I thought Ohio State would be able to, there at the end, to pull it out. I thought Kyle McCord would be able to take them down the field and score. Joe, this game was what, at 46.5 over under? I said, Joe, don't do it. Don't take the under. Take the over. This game historically gets a little bit points.
Wait, did the over hit? I don't even know what the over was.
I think it was 46.5. It was 30-24, which makes it 54. So yeah.
No, I made a joke about not taking the over. And
yeah, you called it a punt. You called it a punt fest. Okay, but nevertheless, Michigan and Ohio State. Ohio State is not able to beat Michigan again. Ohio States are reeling a little bit here. I'll kick it off to you first. What did you think of this game?
I think that the biggest standout thing for me is, and get mad at me for calling out a kid, because in a way I'm kind of doing it, but Kyle McCord is the reason why they lost this football game. Because if you look at it in totality, remove the 2 interceptions he throws. Both sides played really freaking good football. They played really good defense in key spots when they needed to get stops. They had really good rushing plays and chunk yard plays. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a bunch of really nice catches. Mm-hmm. He set them up to score on a number of drives the way that he played. But plain and simple, with Ryan Day's offense, with Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, 2 top 15, top 20 NFL draft wide receivers, Travion Henderson, one of the most talented running backs in the country, and that defense that they have. To lose that football game off of 2 back-breaking interceptions, one that set up a score that shifted the momentum early to Michigan, right, and to throw one on the final drive when all you had to do is just get down the field. You have 2 of the most talented receivers in the country, and I don't know why you're forcing that ball out. You were looking for something that just was not there. I'm really disappointed, and I put blame on Ryan Day too for this, for not acknowledging and seeing the quarterback dynamic to not go and bring competition in through the portal. I don't know who that would have been because there weren't a lot of great options, but to at least not bring somebody in is such a bad move by Ryan Day. Do you remember, Blake, that during the offseason, during this quarterback competition, you and I made a point and said something along the lines of, usually when there is not a clear-cut winner, it either means that both guys are really good or both are really bad.
Right.
And we saw, and we figured this out this season. Nobody wanted to listen to me when I said that Kyle McCord does not have experience stepping up to the plate. And if anything, he's faltered in a number of games, and he did it here. They need to, in this year's portal class, go after some competition. I'm not saying go get the top 2 or top 3 kids, go get one of those kids, but bring in competition because the current situation cannot cut it. You need to motivate him or Devin Brown.
Look, here's another. I will give you the first interception, 4 plays on 4th down, no less. Okay, the defense for Ohio State held them to 4th down. Joe, those 4th down conversions by Michigan was also a backbreaker for Ohio State defensively. Now, I'm not going to talk about the loser first. I'm going to talk about the winner. I thought J.J. McCarthy didn't play a great game, but I thought he played good enough. I thought he made – look, if you just look at the stats, you would say to yourself, okay, J.J. didn't have a great game. I call BS on that. I thought J.J.'s made some high-level throws. Joe, the play action on 4th down, him hitting the tight end on that little route into the flat, did they get a first down? I thought was absolutely just 1,000% crucial. But, Joe, I thought that – this game was lost. Not so much. Yeah, was it on McCord in the 4th quarter and the interception on the last drive? Okay, I could see that. Joe, the 3rd quarter to me was backbreaking for Ohio State. Let me tell you why. Okay, when I look at the 3rd quarter, and we went and rewatched the game today. Okay, Michigan outscored Ohio State 10-7 in the 3rd quarter. Okay, but when you look at it. Okay, and you take it and you just break it down from the quarter by quarter. Michigan gets the ball coming out at halftime, they get the field goal. 6 plays, 46 yards, they get the field goal. Ohio State goes down and scores on 12 plays, 75 yards, they tie it up. If you're going to put that much on Kyle McCord, I agree, he threw the 2 picks. But the game's tied at 17, and Michigan comes right down the field on 7 plays for 75 yards and scores on your ass. Jim Knowles still gave up 30 points, okay? I get that one of those, maybe you can take that away. But, Joe, they go and Michigan goes and takes the lead, okay? 3rd quarter, Ohio State gets the ball back. They go 3 and out, and they punt. That was the backbreaker to me because I felt like they always try to play catch up from that point on, and no matter what they did, they could not do it. Now, from Michigan's standpoint, okay, the moment's not big enough for them. It's not big for them. I felt like the entire game, the moment was just never big enough. Like, yeah, it's the big game. It's in our house. Whoever wins this is more than likely going to the playoff. But it never felt like, even though they were tied, Joe, at 17, I'm like, man, it doesn't matter. Michigan feels like this is, okay, just another day at the office. They go down and score. But I got to give this one guy, look, the stats, it is what it is. Blake Corum had 22 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns, okay? They did so many good things in the running game. But I will tell you, I was surprised. And look, they had every disadvantage on them. They had an interim head coach. They had a couple of guys banged up. I thought that on the outside at their DBs, maybe they're a little bit skeptical. And, Joe, by the way, Marvin Harrison ate their ass up. Pause. But he ate those 2 corners up on the outside, which I'm going to tell you, they better pray to sweet God alive that Washington does not win Friday and Michigan has to play them.
Washington bad matchup.
Because they got 3 dudes that can do that, okay? Yeah. Nevertheless, that game was won in the 3rd quarter. I felt like it's not big enough for Michigan. They are so well run. This is what I come away with the game. They're a better coach team. They have better players all around. They have a better what's the word I'm looking for here, Joe?
Culture.
I feel like they just have a better culture because their head coach is gone. You have an interim head coach who, Joe, and tied up in the 3rd quarter when, look, it's crunch time in this sumbitch. They go down 7 plays, 75 yards and score. Now they got Harbaugh back. So, look, I think that's a great win. Now we look at and what everybody's going to say, Joe, I'm going to be cautious with people. People want Ryan Day out. And I don't think that Ohio State needs to do that. I don't.
Yeah.
Look, you're a one-loss team, man. But it was a tough game. It was a tough game for them. Very tough game.
I'm having my camera is freaking geeking out right now. 1 second.
Okay.
I might need to switch the battery really quick. But to
get the permanent battery, or I'm going to punch you in the face.
1 second. Let me just swap this out really quick.
All right. Nevertheless, I think that they're a better run team. All in all, they are 1,000% the better run team. Cody McGee says, thoughts on Houston firing their head coach, Dana Holgorsen. Who's Houston gonna go after? Look, I do think. Oh, that quickly? Okay, we'll get to that in a quick.
Yeah, I want to get to that in a little bit. To what you're saying about Ryan.
Wade said Ryan Day sucks. He lost to an intern. Look,
I don't think that's fair.
On Ryan Day now, are we bailing on Ryan Day?
No, and I mean, to be honest, I think it's really disrespectful to Sharon Moore. I've said this a million times over. I think that Sharon Moore deserves to be in the discussion for a number of these head coach openings. I think that if Lance Leipold leaves, maybe even put him in the conversation for the Duke opening now that that's available. I think Sharon Moore is a great coach, and I don't think that we should take anything away from him. I also just don't understand what Ohio State fans, what they would expect. Like, who else are you going to go out and bring in to fix the situation? You still have a team that is in the top 5 discussion. You had a team that almost went to the national championship last year. I had previously at one point been one of those people that had said, maybe we move on from Ryan Day, but I don't think doing that solves your problems.
It does
It's just
not.
on a bad streak. You've lost to one team consistently, and that's it. And that has determined your fate. That's the reality of it.
Look, Jim Harbaugh lost this game a crap load of times and finally got the culture. But I will tell you, man, I don't want to put everything on one player, okay? And I'm not going to put everything on Kyle McCord. Those 2 interceptions are critical, okay? I thought that they should have I thought he should have taken over play calling in the second half, right? I thought he should, because I thought the moment was much bigger, and some of the play calling decisions were bigger for their OC, which I love Brian Hartline more than the next guy. Why they did not get Marvin Harrison 10 more targets in this game? And look, I know that sounds ridiculous. I know that sounds stupid. He was unguardable. Joe, I told you what did I literally say on Monday of last week? I said the biggest weakness that Michigan had was the DBs on the boundary. And I get, well, Blake, it's Marvin Harrison. Sure. But you got guys like Roma Dunze that's out there. You have other dudes that you're going to see. Okay, Troy Franklin at Oregon, if you see him, Adonai Mitchell, like, you're going to see those dudes potentially. Georgia might be the only team that doesn't have the dude, okay? But that won't matter. Georgia beats you in a whole different kinds of different ways.
Right.
Why they continued to not excel at putting Marvin Harrison Jr. in man-to-man coverage on the outside and letting him win those reps is beyond me. But here's the truth too. Okay, and I don't want this to get I want this to be understood. Joe, they got pushed around up front along their offensive line, which was your point, okay? All of Monday too. The 2 things that we said that they needed to do offensively did not work. Joe, they ran for 107 yards, and everybody says, well, that could be a little bit skewed because Kyle McCord got sacked. I thought that they were pretty good holding up in pass protection. Joe, he only got sacked once, right? Like, he only got sacked once. And I'm looking here and like, look, man, I know that you can't establish the run, but you're going to have to do some other things that can counteract the run. Joe, go a little play action, get the running back out in the flat. Throw the ball to the running back out in the flat. Loosen those backers up in the inside. They wanted to be a very physical team, and they tried to beat Michigan at their own game, and they got dicked down for it, if I'm being honest. They could not run the football. That's
a really good point. I think that it comes down to the lack of understanding of the situation and how to properly prepare for it. And I think it's very hubristic for the coaching staff to step into this situation and say,
Oh, what did you just say?
Very hubristic.
What in the hell does hubristic mean?
As in that they, as in they. I don't even know how to really truly explain it. As in they were completely full of themselves. They very
Fair
big
enough.
ego in assuming that they could accomplish trying to beat Michigan at their own game, like you just said. But the reality of it is the previous years before, when we saw Ohio State beat Michigan for that stretch of time, it was because Michigan did not have the roster to keep up with them. They didn't. They could not shot for shot match them with the explosive plays. Now, one could argue that Ohio State had much more talented quarterbacks at the time. But at the end of the day, to try and step up to the plate, battle it out along the line of scrimmage, and then also, as you're talking about here, they had success running the football. Why there was not more of an effort to create misdirection, to create play action, to confuse, to create time.
The Chip Trainum, I think is how you say his last name.
Yeah.
19.
Oh, the big back that they have. That was the weirdest part. They don't really use him that often, and they bring him into the mix, and they're just trying to be all physical downhill.
6 carries for 37 yards. His longest was 12. It's not like he busted off a long run to get him those 37 yards. He's picking up 8 fucking yards a carry damn near.
Yeah.
Like, look, Ryan Day, the biggest thing that he was asked for play calling to be taken away from him. All right, fine. You get Brian Hartline. All right, fine. You want the same playmakers on the outside and recruiting. I get it. It's not working for you. And you're going to, if you don't want to call plays, Brian Hartline's not the dude for you. And I will tell you this. If you are, okay, here's the truth, which Ohio State fans have to understand. Now, this is my last point on this. If you want to play that style of ball, you got to recruit and develop like Michigan. You got to recruit and develop like Georgia, Bama, all right, Texas, LSU, Oregon. If you do not recruit along the offensive line like those teams, you're going to get your shit punched in. That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
I completely agree with that. And just to round at that point, what I said at the beginning, this comes down to Kyle McCord not being the guy to get the job done and a lack of preparation by Ryan Day and the coaching staff to set them up to be in a successful position.
Want to get to Florida State and Florida?
Yep, let's do it.
Florida State and Florida in the swamp, Joe. I picked Florida to win, and I am a man of my word. I will come out here and tell everybody when I'm wrong, which people, you know what's so funny? People come out here and say, ha, 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 Blake was wrong. Nah, 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 nah. And I'm like, dude, it does not bother me as much. It's not the flex that you think that it is.
Well, the worst bit that people do that pisses me off all the time is that when you come in here and you're like, okay, I was wrong and here's what's happened, and you try to break it down, everyone gets all, they'll come at your neck and they'll be like, oh, all of a sudden you're changing your tune. And it's like, what are you talking about? Why would I sit here and keep being wrong?
Right. Florida State and Florida in the swamp this past weekend. Joe, what were your thoughts when you watched this game last night?
I don't think that you agree with me, but I think that the second half performance, and it started with that final drive of the first half, what Tate Rodemaker did was not perfect. It was not up to the level of play necessary for them to beat Louisville, to win the ACC championship, to win a playoff game. But I think that Florida State fans should feel some optimism that he started to find a little bit of a rhythm. He started to make some better plays, but more importantly, the run game started to show up. And you're going to need Trey Benson in that run game to cook, to make some big, big plays the way that they did in the second half in order for them to go on this run necessary. I think that Rodemaker plays well enough for them to win the next game that they have against Louisville, and they belong in the college football playoff if they do so.
I agree with that. Harlan Harris, our buddy, sends a $4.99 super chat, says, ha, 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 ha. Blake was wrong. Where's Florida State ranked Tuesday, boys? In the top 4 for me. Look, I mean, so I think two things can be true at the same time. I agree with you? Do I think Tate Rodemaker did enough from the last drive in the first half on for them to win the game? Yes. Now, I don't think that kid passed concussion protocol. I think I saw that kid's eyes.
Oh, man.
I was like, look, man, I don't think that kid passed concussion protocol. Nevertheless, he came back out there. Joe, Florida State went on a 24-3 run. And I love that they got Trey Benson involved. He had 3 touchdowns. I love how their defense stood up in what I will continue to always say, which people do not give them. Florida is a hostile environment. Florida was up 12-0 and had a chance to go up more, and they screwed the pooch. Billy went full conservative. Joey's running the ball on 3rd and 7. He's running the ball on 3rd and 6, and punting and thinking that his defense will just stand up the entire time, which I don't completely hate it. But your defense, you're not 2021 Georgia. You can't just run the ball 3 times and punt and say, let's get on out of here. You can't do that.
No.
I thought Austin Armstrong had called one hell of a game. But like I said, two things can be true. I thought Tate Rodemaker kind of grew up a little bit in front of our eyes. I think he did some good things. But he was 12 of 25 for 134 yards. I thought he managed well enough. But from here on out, Louisville included, he can't have those type of performances if they want to get where they want to go. Now, if your goal is to get to the playoff because Jordan Travis is down, all right, I'm with you. Okay? But I just got to call what I'm seeing, and what I see is, do I think the kid can beat Louisville? Do I think that they're going to beat Louisville? Yeah, I actually do think that they can beat Louisville. I'm going to pick them to beat Louisville, okay? Even though I think that the worst thing that could happen is that Louisville lost to Kentucky last week. I think it's awful for them because they're going to be more focused going into this if they weren't already. But I just don't like some of the things I saw from him. Now, the kid's got a very live arm. Kid can rip it now.
Yeah. No, he's talented. This isn't like some backup that you're throwing into the mix that's 6 foot and it's got a noodle arm or something like that. I mean, the guy can sling it. He's just
they got to get Keon Coleman the ball more. They got to find ways to get Coleman the ball. Go trips right. Put Keon Coleman at the X on the outside. Let him run a quick slant, a quick hitch. Let him throw the football. I did think Norvell got a little conservative. Yeah. They ran the ball a lot. But I will say this now. As much shit as we've given Florida State this year for not being able to run the football when it mattered most, like we said this past week, okay, good teams find ways to win, okay, and the team around them gets better, and I thought that they did that.
So there's two things that I think support why I'm feeling pretty good about Florida State. Now, I'm not feeling that they go on a national championship run. I think that they're
not winning in that.
Right. But why I think that they're going to end up sneaking in as that 4th team after all the chaos ensues.
There's no sneaking in.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to make the narrative that they don't belong in over some of these one-loss teams, which I think is bullshit. I think that they do belong in. But if they beat Louisville, they win the ACC championship game, they deserve to be in there at that 4th spot or maybe even the 3rd spot. And then they also maybe have some potential to win that first game if they have a favorable matchup. But why I feel good about their situation is, one, you're throwing Tate Rodemaker into a really difficult, hostile environment for his first ever. Actually, I don't know if it was his first start, but for his first start,
I think
on
he
this
played a lot against
run.
Louisville or started last year.
Yeah. But an important start this season, first start this season, to throw him into this situation where it's a bad Florida team, but in the swamp, in a very hostile environment against a team with a really good defensive line, very physical team that is trying to take your head off, literally, for him to step up to the occasion and make some nice plays to develop a little bit of confidence is going to help them further down the line. And I think that is probably the low of this run. I think that he can string together a better performance against Louisville that will make him feel even better going into the college football playoff. I also have to add here, I think that their defensive line is peaking right now at the most important time. Their defensive line has been good the whole season.
Yeah,
it has
Braden
been
Fisk,
talented.
my God, dude.
Dude, Fisk and Jared Verse, who we talked about
Yeah.
the whole offseason, quiet in some games. They teed off, man. They knew, they stepped up to the plate and they said, all right, we got to win this freaking football game. We're going to make plays. We're going to get stops. We're going to get sacks. We're going to be all over this young quarterback. And they smelled blood when they knew that it was there. So that's why I feel good about Michigan State, because of the circumstance of the positives that they showed against Florida.
Look, one final thing I want to add to this, okay? Because we hadn't talked a lot about Florida. I think Austin Armstrong called one hell of a game. They're the DC of Florida. Florida fans are hurting, man. They want a winner. They are hurting, man. And I
still think there's potential, dude. I think that with the recruiting class,
Joe,
that DJ Lagway kid coming in is really
only one
good.
kid. He's only one kid. They're losing recruits. They're losing top tier blue chip recruits on both lines of scrimmage. They went from a top 3 class to, I think, a number 6 class.
They're still a number 5 right now.
Well, some of those kids are going to flip. I'm telling you.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But I'm just saying, I don't know. Joe, how long are you going to wait on Billy?
I think you give him one more year. I think if this team doesn't win 8 football games next year, that's when you pull the plug.
Have you seen their schedule for next year?
Well, that's all the more reason why I think that 8 sounds low. But if you win 8 football games,
I think that's enough benefit of the doubt. Schedule that he's got next year, then I'm like, that might be a little bit of success.
It's a lot of success. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, they might be a 4-loss team. Okay, they might be 8-4 at the end of this and still be a top 15 team because of the schedule that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bottom line is Billy ain't cutting it. Billy ain't cutting it. I
disagree.
He's going to have to go get himself an OC.
Yeah, that play calling stinks.
That is trash. It's
got to get someone.
P5 or G5 Billy, man.
Sunbelt Billy.
Sunbelt Billy. All right. You want to get to the last game of the night here?
Let's do it.
The Iron Bowl. Man, we've had some goofy shit happen in this game, Joe. You've had Chris Davis, the kick 6. Maybe that's the most goofy thing that I remember. But just a lot of goofy shit that's always happened in this game. I have never in my life seen an ending on 4th and goal from the 30-whatever yard line in what seemed to be man-to-man coverage on the outside. They rush 2, drop 9, and still find a way for a receiver to be on man-to-man coverage. Jalen Milroe drops back, hits Isaiah Bond in the back of the end zone. Auburn loses the football game in a game that they should have upset Alabama.
I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought that was going to happen because I'd be a goddamn liar, but I have to admit, I don't know what it was, but when that ball was snapped and he dropped back, I just had this gut feeling he's going to hit, something's going to happen. So he's going to hit someone. And he did. And it's insane. Look, I will give Alabama some grace here. I know Alabama fans that, they call me an Alabama hater. I'm not going to sit here and do you look like crap against Auburn and Auburn's a bad team and blah, blah, blah. All of your issues showed up. It's the Iron Bowl. The craziest stuff happens in that game, even if either team is down. The craziest things happen. As we saw, the ending proves anything can happen. But I still stand by that I don't really have any confidence in this offense. I really do think that we have unjustifiably propped up their offense because they had some very favorable matchups, and they had a very favorable matchup here against Auburn, and it did not feel like they stepped up to the plate. They just didn't. I didn't think that they played well enough, in my opinion, for me to feel confident going into the Georgia game. I'm not going to do it. Why are you smiling? What are you about to say to me?
Because all I could think about all day long during show prep was when Auburn went up 21-20. You texted me and you said, man, Auburn might actually do it. They might have the upset. And I texted you back and I quote, you don't know this game like I know this game. Auburn's going to find a way to blow it, and it's going to be insane. Joe, Alabama right after that would miss a field goal, okay? Riker would miss a field goal, which he has been more accurate than anybody. Auburn then went on a 16-play drive, kicked a field goal, made it, goes up 24-20. I know the last play is bad, but down the stretch, they had so many chances to where they could have put this game away and didn't. Auburn then forced a 3-and-out. Alabama would punt late in that football game, okay? Auburn had a chance to play a little bit of keep away. If they got a couple first downs, that ball game's over. It's over, Joe. Hugh Freeze, in the play calling that they had late in that game, they ran stuff that they had not been running all game. They wound up putting the football away, and then they give Alabama the last glimmer of hope to go down and score. Now, I have no idea what they were thinking rushing 2. I have no idea what they were thinking dropping 9 and leaving one guy, and let's just call it what it is. They can say they played zone coverage. They didn't. You got one dude on one dude. That's man-to-man coverage. Leaving him wide-ass open. How does that happen? Like, you had multiple chances to win that football game and put it away, and you couldn't do it. You can blame Peyton Thorne, Joe. I get it. He went 5 of 16, 91 yards. He threw 2 picks. I get it. But, man, the dude was running for his freaking life and picked up some
he played a good game. He played a good game despite the stat line.
5 of 16, okay, fool you. The dude was getting critical third downs, running the football. Why they changed up things offensively, why they were not prepared there at the end on 4th and goal from the 31 blows my ever-living mind.
I think you're going to disagree with me on this, but I think that game is far more telling for Auburn's situation than it is for anything with Alabama. Like I just said, I'm not going to really detract from Alabama because it's the Iron Bowl. I still maintain my original takes. But I think you're going to disagree with me on this. I think that's a huge positive for Hugh Freeze and for the direction. No, come on. Heading into next year, that is a total fluky play that happens at the end of the game. To be in that position to win the football game when you have no goddamn reason, there isn't a shot in hell that they should have been in a position to win that football game with how weak that roster is and how the fact that we just talked about a quarterback who played terrible throwing the football. They couldn't throw the ball.
Good coaches find ways to win close games.
Dude, they might have one of the worst rosters in the SEC.
No, they don't. Vandy does. Joe,
bottom 3 in the SEC. They're above Vandy and Mississippi State, and I would put them below South Carolina.
No, they're ahead of South Carolina. South Carolina's
actually got a quarterback, though. Spencer Rattler plays the game. They might win the game. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Come on, though. For them to be in that position.
They're 4th and goal from the 31-yard line. What are we talking about? You also had Georgia at your place, okay, and you could have upset them. Like, you had multiple chances to get upsets here. Joe, look, 4th and 31 will never, like, that is insane. And the simple fact, Joe, that the Sun Belt, like, if it would be one thing. Like, let me tell you this. It would be one thing if, okay, they threw a Hail Mary and it was just like a crazy catch at the end, like some Aaron Rodgers type luck on a Hail Mary. Okay, look, man, they got lucky. All right. You can't help that. You're trying to knock the ball down. It gets through, and one of the dudes catches it. All right, whatever. But, bro, they got man-to-man coverage on the outside on 4th and goal from the 31. And then you're going under center when Alabama has to punt. You get a 3 and out. You could have stalled the game. Joe, you got to get 1 first down. And here's another thing. I know that you didn't want to punt that football. Even going for it on 4th down, you've held them to under 20-something points. Now, the final score doesn't indicate because not Kool-Aid McKinstry, the Arnold kid had the pick 6 there at the end. So it kind of the score looks different.
Right.
All right. But why not even attempt to go for it on 4th down? That Hugh lost this game, brother. He lost this game. It's not more you talk about all the time. Good teams find ways to win unless their names.
They're a bad football team, though. They're a dog shit. That is not a good football team. That's not a good roster. What does that have to do with anything?
Because Washington almost lost to Stanford too.
Okay, stop. We're not talking about Washington right now. You are a menace. Stop it. We're not talking about Washington. It never fails. It never fails with you bringing stuff up like that.
Texas Tech too.
I think that is a significant accomplishment to put yourself in that much of a position. You couldn't throw the ball. And that team is supposed to have one of the best run defenses in the country.
Plays? Why are you running shit that you hadn't run all fucking night?
He probably got it as to have the roster that he was handed, that Brian Harsin didn't recruit shit. Brian Harsin just abstained from recruiting at anywhere near a competitive level. And you have Hugh Freeze stepping in, who is a known recruiter. Like, that is his best trait and why the future could be bright for them. This isn't an in-game guy. That's not his best trait. It is the recruiting aspect of things. And for him to galvanize his team to put themselves in a position where they almost won, I got to give him credit for that. That is such a significant accomplishment. Yes, were there bad decisions that were made? Absolutely. Did some dipshit defensive back fall asleep because he wasn't paying attention? And were guys not fighting to get over there in the corner of the end zone to defend that play? Yes, that's not great stuff. But I don't think that they are in a position with that roster to be anywhere near close to winning that football game. We said this in the preview. I said this in the preview. They should have gotten their asses blown out, and they didn't.
You know that we've been on the show too long when I'm about to make a joke and say pause when you say somebody got their ass blown out. All right. We do have a super chat here. Let me get to it. Cody McGee asks thoughts on Houston firing their head coach. Who is Houston going after? I don't really know who they're going after. I know that there's some names that's out there. Willie Fritz's name has come up in that one, the Tulane head coach. But Dana Holgorsen, man, jeez.
Talk about a bag fumbling in a position to, really hit the ground running in the Big 12, but just completely blew that one. I think Jeff Traylor from UTSA is the one for me.
Yeah,
he
could win there.
Yeah, I mean we've seen him coach well in Texas.
Great show, man.
Hell of a show.
All right, we'll see y'all again tomorrow night. It's championship week, so stay with us at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Y'all have a good one. Peace.